Well, let us begin our session with the usual prayer for teacher and student. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Punuktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astuma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May our study be full of vigor and energy. May it be an illuminating factor for our minds. Let us not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Well, of course, that last piece, let us not cavil with each other, disagree with each other, is to do with our subject matter today, which is the sacredness of speech. We have to bear in mind that we are perpetually talking when we are awake and sometimes even are asleep. And so what are we talking about? Is it something that will help us, something that will elevate our minds, or is it something that will bring us into a downward spiral? And so the choice of conversation is up to us. And often the conversation comes from reactions to other things. But if we are to consider the sacredness of sound, we have to find out why sound itself, without even speech, but why sound is sacred. And speech is an emanation of sound established by the vocal cords. In our biological evolution, a FOXP2 mutation allowed us to communicate with sounds, possibly starting with, let's say, with grunts. And many people still communicate in grunts, you'll understand. So there's a useful passage in the Chandogya Upanishad because it opens up completely with this wonderful, wonderful statement. Om iti etad aksharam udgitam upasita. Om iti hrad gayati tasyo pavyakyayanam. This pavyakyanam, one should meditate on what? One should meditate on this syllable. What is the syllable? The Udgita, that is the Samaveda that chants the content of the Rig Veda. For one sings the loud chant beginning with Om. In other words, Om. One should meditate on Om. And so naturally we require some kind of reasoning behind why it should be. Swami Vivekananda points out in discussing Om that regardless of its meaning, it is something that has been chanted for thousands and thousands of years, and every kind of recitation from the Vedas, every kind of recitation in doing mantras for pujas, ceremonies, ritualism, everything begins with this sound Om, and for its antiquity alone, it is sacred. But the sound, of course, Om, represents for us the first emanation of a vibration that results in this cosmos, that results in our known existence, our registered existence. And so it's very, very significant that when we repeat our nearest sound equivalent in human language, that we should come back to its original meaning, a kind of guiding series of signs, if you like, road signs, that bring us back in a certain direction to the origin of sound itself. And what we mean by sound is everything that vibrates. When we analyze today with the advantage of modern science, we realize there is nothing that does not vibrate or oscillate. You might say more accurately, oscillate. That is, everything has a certain wavelength, a certain frequency, whether we call it electrical energy, whether we call it simply the vibration that is happening now and received by your ears over long distances, because the electromagnetic wave system that we are using is present by you, is present by me. And so what is happening? What is happening is a thought is coming into my mind, and that thought is coming out, being expressed very quickly through neurological signals into the reciprocal voice box that sets up a vibration that is picked up by a microphone that vibrates, and that is all picked up by a radio system, an electromagnetic system that is highly sophisticated now in our usage, and then arrives through the akasha, if you like, through the ether, through space, to your eardrum that vibrates. And that continues, because if you're alert, the registration of the words will come into your brain and corresponding images will come, and all of this in a split second or a few moments. So this is a wonderful miracle that we're all experiencing. And it's something we take for granted. And so this comes through as speech, and speech requires a certain intention. The intentionality is there, but sometimes we blurt something out and it becomes extremely damaging. Coming back to Om, the syllable Om is recited at every Vedic chant, begins with it. And of course, it represents the Supreme. And before we attain to the supreme vision of what we might say in devotional language, God, the contemplative realization, the first thing we have to do with speech is prayer. So we start off with prayer, and that leads to meditation. We might chant, we might sing with the devout mind, with a fervor of spirit, with an inmost longing for the things that are the highest and the noblest, with a purity of our soul, our intention, or our mind. So we strive to keep this soul unembarrassed and at rest from all thoughts, because thoughts generally are diversionary avenues that take us away from a central theme, that take us away from the central purpose of the practice of what we might call yoga or concentration, and that is ekagra, one-pointedness. And so we have to direct our attention lovingly, patiently, not like whipping a horse, just coaxing, encouraging, continuously toward our goal, which religion identifies as God, or in the Vedanta we call Atman. So in meditation, the soul is furnished with a symbol on which we can fix our gaze, on which we can concentrate all our imagination and our reasoning. And when meditation reaches its end, when there is no distraction or disquiet, in other words, when speech itself has gone, when there is a calm repose, sweet tranquility, a peace that passes the understanding, then we get a vision. Any name may raise us to this perfect state of contemplation. We start off with prayer, and we pass on to meditation progressively. And when this discursive act ceases, in other words, when our verbosity quietens down, when all speech is gone, then that is the stage where we have contemplation. Contemplation, we have the language for dharana, or concentration. So this Chandogya Upanishad, Chandogya, that's named after the Chandi, the singing. So this Upanishad that opens up with its instruction that we should concentrate on the syllable Om. Very often people say, well, mantras have no meaning, it's just a sound, and so we don't have to know its meaning. We don't have to think about it. Well, every text, including that great work by Patanjali, the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, say that the way is to repeat this Om, this Omkara, and meditate on its meaning. And here again we have it. In the highest authority we can think of, namely the Upanishad. And so this instruction starts off, this Chandogya Upanishad, to concentrate on the syllable Om, to draw our thoughts away from all other subjects, and to develop what we can call as egrata, that is a one-pointedness. The symbol cannot be taken as final. It is like a keyhole through which we can open up the reality. It has a number of aspects. When it's transposed into the words of ordinary language, it becomes dim and it becomes rigid. And then, of course, we tend to confine the meaning within narrow dogmatic frames. That's the trap, the downfall of religion due to meaningless dogma. And even though the symbol Om, like all symbols, covers the reality as by kind of a veil, to those who know how to look, the veil becomes transparent. Om is not only the origin of every other vibration, but it also acts as a veil through which, a transparent veil, through which we can observe the reality. So this is the Chandogya Upanishad. But you'll realize that the power of speech is such that it can have devastating effects everywhere. And unless we have a disciplined speech, internal as well as external, then we're out for trouble. There's a particular kind of wave in the mind that is identified by Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras called Vikalpa. He has this sutra that reads about a next class of waves, vrittis, in the mind. We can view the mind as a kind of field or a kind of lake in which waves arise. And 5 types of waves have been identified. What are they? Well, right knowledge, wrong knowledge, and then memory and sleep. But there's this peculiar thing called vikalpa. Vikalpa. Shabda, jnana, anupati, vastu, shunyaha, vikalpaha. Verbal delusion. And this follows from words which have no corresponding reality. We can take it at various levels of sophistication. I'll always remember, way back in Zimbabwe, a devotee telling me his frustration that he'd sent a messenger with a certain letter to a certain company. And he gave it to a messenger, a driver, and the driver disappeared. And he was found the day later, he came back. Where have you been? I gave you a letter to deliver to this company who is like 2 blocks away. And the messenger says, oh, okay. I took it to the company way off in Lilongwe. He was in Blantyre, Lilongwe. Some great distance, many hundreds of kilometers away, and came back. So what happened? A breakdown in communication. Communication is an art involving speech, and speech is only a part of it. But if we're unclear in our speech, then the whole thing falls apart. Now, speech comes out in cultural backgrounds. There are variations, there are various accents. When I came to Ireland, I discovered that it's not a standard thing. You know, there's a Cork accent and there's a Galway accent, and even if you go down the road, there's a different accent. In Yorkshire, I think it is, there was somebody, a devotee, who told me, put wood in all. And I couldn't figure out what that meant. And then I discovered, he explained, no, it's a Yorkshire expression, that you have to put the wood in the hole. That's another way of saying, please shut the door. Put the wood in the hole. And this has been going on for centuries, no doubt, as an expression. So it's a very, very tricky thing. It requires a level of discipline. That is why the Bhagavad Gita gives us some guidelines when it talks about a direction of will to do with body, to do with speech, and to do with mind. This disciplinary direction or directive is called tapasya. In other words, tapas implies heat caused by friction. And we can use the speech to cause friction. That's a different kind of friction. It's a very, very delicate thing. Let us see, what is this verbal delusion? So Swami Vivekananda gives us this commentary. He says, there's another class of vrittis or waves called vikalpa. A word is uttered, and when we don't wait to consider its meaning, we jump to a conclusion immediately. It's a sign of weakness of the chitta, the mind stuff. And now you can understand the theory of restraint. The weaker the man, the less he has of restraint. Examine yourselves always, he says. By that test, when you're going to be angry or miserable, reason it out how it is that some news has come to you is throwing your mind into vrittis, into waves. What a beautiful way of describing the mental process. A thought is like a kind of internal projection that upsets the equilibrium of what we might consider as the lake of the mind. The lake can be very calm. I recently returned from Lake Geneva, and such a calm lake. And it is about 80 kilometers long, it's about 15 kilometers wide, and such a calm lake. The largest lake, I think, is the largest lake in whole of Europe, but extremely calm and extremely transparent, unless a boat comes and creates some waves. Now we artificially create waves in the mental field. And these waves are a reaction, and they can be of three types. You know them very well. They can be calming, where all the other waves are neutralized. They can be disruptive, like what we call rajas. And then they can be hugely disruptive by virtue of that nothing you can see in the lake. There is no clarity whatsoever. It stirs up all the mud whatsoever. And mud is thick, and mud obscures the reality, the depth of the lake, where we see the clarity of the bottom. So how do we allow these waves to come? Because we can only describe it as an allowance, even though you may not think, oh, it just came. No, you allowed it to come because it is from a preconditioning, a way that we view the world. And we view the world through the lens of imagination. We see ghosts everywhere by phrases such as, what if? What if this happens? What if that happens? Or excuses, the word but this, but that. Now, all of these are related to time, either in the past or the future, but right here and now in the present, we have the opportunity to access an area of deep silence. And it is this area of deep silence that is described by the commentaries on this Chandogya Upanishad. Prayer, we start off like that. In other words, a speech which is trained to elevate the whole spirit, the whole mind, and give us a level of internal contentment that reaches a crescendo of ecstatic joy. This is spiritual life. There's a great confusion about spiritual life, which has a kind of caricature of it that says, oh, a person has to have a face down by the knees. It's a very serious process. There has to be, a cloistered atmosphere and all of these kinds of things. Well, we don't find evidence of this in the lives of the greatest souls. We don't find this evidenced in the lives of the mystics and saints. We see that they are fully engaged with society. They are open channels of divine grace that flows and creates a transformative effect. So it is our imagination that leads us to blurt something out in a sense of verbal delusion. We imagine many things, And this imagination can be stirred up by careless talking. What do we mean by careless talking? Let's see what the Bhagavad Gita has to say on the discipline of speech. It says, Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat swadhyaya bhashanam chaiva vanmaya tapa uchate. Words that cause no offense and which are truthful, which are pleasant, which are beneficial, and also regular recitation of scriptures. These are said to be austerity, tapasya, of speech. Why is it tapasya? Why is it a mechanism that causes some friction? Because it goes against the grain of our habit. What is our habit? The exact opposite of this in many cases. We have words that cause offense. Many times we have these words. These are the most painful weapons that we have. We can use them deliberately, in a sarcastic way. We can use them to mock. We can use them to bring people down. We can use them to destroy somebody's reputation. We can use them to gossip. There are many, many forms that would cause offense. Of all the weapons that we have in our human arsenal, the most destructive will be careless speech, or even speech which is arrogant, and speech which is accusative, or speech which is false, or even speech which is aggressive. So how do we deal with this side of our human nature, our human response? We cultivate words that cause no offense. It means that we have to carefully select these words. On what basis? On the fundamental basis that the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita are teaching, and all religions are teaching. And that is that within us, at the very fundamental level, is this Atman. Accessing this, we resolve all problems. It is our final tool in our toolbox. Love your neighbor as yourself. Why? Because the sacred divine resides within. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Why should we not cause somebody offense? Why should we not speak our mind carelessly? Because the recipient is the divine. We can say the Lord himself standing there, dressed up in this form. Failure to understand this and acknowledge it is a failure to understand what the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is saying. And Krishna is saying that know that a portion of myself has come as the jiva. Now we forgetfulness of this constitutes what we call ignorance. So words that cause no offense to anybody. Words which are truthful. Now, we can say words that are truthful can often cause offense. And so this stanza doesn't leave it there. It says, which are truthful, but also, we may say, pleasant and beneficial. Imagine when you encounter somebody and they have the capacity to leave you in a better condition, leaves you with a sense of upliftment, a sense of joy. One of my own personal joys would be when I address groups, as I have done recently, and I see there's a transformation within them, because all we're talking about is the realm of human possibilities, infinite possibilities. We're talking about the realm of joy and peace. We're not talking about hell and destruction. We're not theologians. We're teaching something that allows people to access an indescribable, inscrutable aspect of themselves deep within, the authentic self within them. And automatically that gives an upliftment. And this happens through speech, through selecting proper words, concepts, because speech is really just a painting of a concept. The concept is there. We artistically paint a picture. Imagine if all our speech became like a work of art to be hung in a famous gallery. Something that whenever somebody looks at it will immediately uplift their spirits. and give them a deeper insight into the meaning and purpose of life. So something that is not only pleasant, phrased in a pleasant way, that includes tone of voice, not just the words. I often say when politicians say, that they are to tell you the truth, it's not the truth. When they say to be honest, it's not. There's no necessity to say to be honest if you are honest. It's a kind of habit that we have, a kind of turn of phrase. So when somebody says I'm humble, then if you're a politician, it may not be so. It might not be. History has shown us the unreliability of political statements and politicians. So they must be truthful, but also pleasant without being overly flattery. Over flattery is another form of verbal delusion, and beneficial. That means you're going a step further. You're tuning your speech in such a way that somebody is benefiting from it. And also, how do we condition the mind in this? The stanza goes on to say, regular recitation of scriptures. Swadhyaya Bhashanam. Regular recitation of scriptures. These are said to be what? They are said to be the tapa uchate, said to be the austerity of speech, vanmaya. So this austerity of speech is one of three austerities that are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. The first would be the austerity of the body, whereby we condition the body. And part of that conditioning is also by use of speech, but specifically selecting speech as a disciplinary practice. And then thirdly, this is the tapas, the discipline of the mind, creating a serenity of the mind, gentleness, and in that we find a clue about the speech. It is all connected. Manha prasada shamyatam maunam atma vinagraha. Serenity of mind, gentleness, and maunam, silence, self-control, purity of heart. These are the mental austerities that we practice. A very succinct, kind of condensed version of the qualities that we should be practicing. Well, we get serenity of mind by not criticizing others, not judging others, not spreading gossip. There's a wonderful rule of Benedict. It forms chapter 6 in the rule of Benedict. And that great saint, Saint Benedict, gives us the following guidance. Starts off with a quotation. It says, "Let us follow the prophet's counsel. I said, I have resolved to keep watch over my ways, that I may never sin with my tongue. I was silent and was humbled, and I refrained even from good works." And here the prophet, says Benedict, indicates that there are times with good works when good works are to be left unsaid out of esteem for silence. For all the more reason, then, should evil speech be curbed so that punishment for sin may be avoided. Indeed, so important is silence that permission to speak should seldom be granted even to mature disciples. No matter how good or holy or constructive they talk, because it is written, in a flood of words you will not avoid sin. And elsewhere, the tongue holds the key to life and death. The quotation from Proverbs. Speaking and teaching are the master's task. The disciple is to be silent and listen. Now, when you break down this wonderful statement that Benedict gives, you have a wonderful commentary on the use of speech and the use of silence. So there's a wonderful commentary from abbot, Benedictine abbot Philip Lawrence, and he puts this out as very profound. He says, this chapter of the rule, this is the rule of St. Benedict for monks. Now you may say, but we're not monks, so we don't have to follow this rule. No, it is showing us the ideal of speech. And so he says the chapter of the rule is most important today when so much of culture thinks that everything must be put into words and shared. Already words, you go into a car and the radio has to be on, or something has to be on. One of the great wisdom lessons of the early monks was that sometimes even good and holy thoughts should be left unsaid. Today they can be published, everyone can read them, you don't have to speak them. Now, you see, it is a wonderful thing to eat in silence sometimes. It is a wonderful thing to just be in people's presence in silence. But very often people find silence to be an awkward thing. Somehow we have the urge, oh, somebody has to say something. Not at all. There's no obligation about that. And sometimes more communication in silence can be done without it. I always remember my own guru, and he was not a very talkative person, actually. You could feel that he was steeped in silence. Sitting there at his feet, people who filled the room where he had his office, his bedroom, his reception room, everything. And nobody would say anything. Occasionally he would say something, But people were very happy, and I was very happy just to sit in his holy presence and enjoy, bask, if you like, in the sunshine of his holiness. So the abbot continues like this. One of the practices that all of us should undertake from time to time is actual physical silence. That means not moving the mouth and not moving the body. This is my commentary on his. We need to practice not saying even the good thoughts that we have, not communicating them to anyone. Part of this practice will show us the places and the people that stimulate us to communicate. And another part of this practice will show the strength of our desire to communicate and the strength of our own will to resist that desire. This is tapasya, exercising the will to do or not to do, to speak or not to speak. We need, he continues, to become persons who are aware of the power of words. Words shape us and form us. Words direct our attention and our energies. Words can build up and they can tear down. Even a word of truth can be destructive when it's not uttered in charity and true love. This is as much a commentary on the sutras that have just read out in terms of speech from the Bhagavad Gita. He says, we need to become persons who are aware of the power of words. Then he says, Saint Benedict is terribly strong in condemning gossip and murmuring in the monastery. We need to be deeply aware of the why he contends gossip and murmuring. And we might say not just in the monastery, in our own environment. He says, because they kill and destroy. Not only do they kill and destroy another person, they attack the very heart of community, charity for one another. When you gossip, you cannot be loving and charitable. And what the content of the gossip is probably half-truth at the most. The rest may well be rumor or just hearsay. My own grandfather, who was a very wise man, used to say, son, he never said grandson. Anyway, son, he said, never believe what you hear and only half believe what you see. He must have had this great insight into Maya. Then the abbot continues, we need to be aware that there are two strains of thought about laughter in the rule. Benedict is never very favorable to laughter or jest, but the chapter on Lent indicates that he was aware that laughter and jesting were part of normal life. And that reminds me that for Christians at the moment, this period of 40 days, is a period of Lent leading up to the Good Friday Easter event. And so part of the great discipline about Lent really would be the practice of silence. I once heard somebody say, for Lent, I'm giving up. Well, don't give up, Of course, he was jesting. So the abbot continues beautifully to say, when a person destroys with laughter and jest, perhaps there is worse blame because that which should be joyful is being used for destruction. So over exuberance is what is being told. And then he ends up with this beautiful exhortation. Let us resolve to use our words to build up one another. May our silence be a joyful communion with the Lord, so that we may love others more faithfully. This is a very fine commentary, unintentionally, on this wonderful stanza that we find contained in the Bhagavad Gita that we just read out. So we have to be very careful about our speech. I'm giving up negativity for Lent, but we'll see how long that lasts. Is another humorous thing that I once heard. Lent can be a time for silent reflection, and we have to understand the great value of silence, because in meditation and in a meditative way, meditative walking, meditative working, meditative sitting, meditative speaking, all of this is done against a background of calmness and silence. So we see in the Yoga Sutras also the other value of satyam, that is truthfulness, under the title of yama, controls. And of course, when we talk about this tapasya, we find it more specifically in niyam, the specific observances in the yoga practice. So what is this satyam? That thoughts, words, and deeds should all match. This is also part of the truthfulness. Swami Purnananda, we found, was his birthday was last week, I think it was. In his teachings, he says something very profound to say on the subject. He says, never talk ill of anybody, be he a devotee, a monk, or an ordinary householder, nor despise any for a wrong act. After all, everyone is a child of the Lord. Who knows today's sinning will not make him a saint tomorrow. Other acts do not count so much as a moment's love for the Lord. Blessed is he who has loved him even for a moment. Saint or sinner, the Lord loves all. And he continues, it's a great sin to find fault with others. You will invariably find that it is such people as never do good to themselves or a good act to themselves who easily see defects in others and energetically spread rumors. Then he continues on the different thing. Do you ask what happens if one believes in God and loves him? He is rendered innocuous. He cannot do harm to anyone. This brings peace to himself and society. There is one overhead. Commit wrong and you suffer. So he's giving the background to why we should not talk carelessly. Now, remarkably, we find the famous words of Sharda Devi. When her master had passed away, she spent about a year in Vrindavan. And then in Vrindavan, there was a particular prayer that she records. She says, oh, please remove the tendency in me to find fault with others, to criticize others. Then we see this in our marvelous prayer that we recite actually after or before every meal. And if you want to find peace of mind, don't find fault in others, rather examine your own self. And in addition to that, make the whole world your own. So Jesus puts it in the language, he who is without sin cast the first stone. So we find a wide variety of understandings, all coming to the same consensus of agreement. Then how do we practically control the speech? Well, by introducing affirmative, positive words. Because when we examine any negativity within our mind, we find it's because of a monologue. We are talking to ourselves. We are the talker and we are the listener. And all of this is being taken in, and it's a circular movement, a reaction to things stirred up into the library of the unconscious, bringing out more negativity and continuing the circle all the time, the circuit all the time. But God made the world and saw that it was good. We have no right to see it as bad. We have to revise our interpretation and understanding of the world as mere waves emanating from this supreme sound, Om, and seeing everything in the divine capacity, seeing it as God sees it, through God's eyes, on God's throne. That would be a great advantage to us. And then our monologues will be, and dialogues, because there'll be dialogues of prayer. We'll be talking to the living presence of the divine, always with us. We'll be sharing our joys, sharing our sorrows, sharing our ups, sharing our downs, sharing our emotions, sharing our thoughts in a wonderful, wonderful dialogue of divine grace and love. Why not? So we have to examine what our monologue consists of and change it. We can use powerful words, but of course the recitation of Om is extremely powerful. And then if you have a mantra from a guru or any other mantra, that is also powerful because it consists of concepts. And that is why I continuously repeat these words. Everybody we should complete, because there is a peculiar resonance in the human. But when we repeat a word, the body and the mind, the psychophysical, resonates with it. And we may conclude the external world also resonates with it, because that great cosmic lake called the cosmic mind is resonating with it and blessing everyone or cursing everyone along with your thought. Don't think that your thought is confined to yourself. The magnetic field of the entire human personality is beyond the physical range of the human physique. And so we have to be careful how we agitate our whirlpool. Words such as strong, true, wise, full, free, beauty, goodness, love, harmony, continuously reverberating in you, along with the repetition of your mantra, which is calling on your particular form of the highest principle. Doing all of these, this is part of the study that is mentioned by Patanjali in his Niyam. So that tapas, that is controlling the will in these three dimensions, the body, speech, and mind. And then also the study which incorporates the chanting or reading of scriptural texts. Fortunately, every religion has a scriptural text of some kind. So repeating the scriptural texts or any holy book or the life of a holy saint, filling the mind up, saturating the mind with elevating thoughts. May noble thoughts come to us from all sides, the Vedas tell us. It's a prayer. So we have to think along those lines. May noble thoughts come to us from all sides, and may noble speech, we may add, be distributed internally and everywhere also. Not only elevating ourselves, but elevating others also. So the use of japa is very powerful in this. Japa serves two purposes. That is continuously, not counting, but continuously repeating, lovingly repeating, with non-demanding love, the highest principle that we have, or the name of God, keeping that company. That is practicing the divine presence through speech, internally, because we don't have to say it with the lips. That would be a crude version of the recitation of a mantra, valid no doubt, but not the most subtle form of it. And this is simply calling on the name of the divine in such a way that we are practicing the divine presence, calling to mind. And then you may ask in connection with that, in the midst of our activities where we have to concentrate on this and that, how is this possible? No, in areas, most of our life is in these areas where the mind is not occupied with anything in particular. This is the moment when we make this recitation. And then even when we are doing any form of work that requires concentration, you'll find the unconscious repetition going on continuously, like a piece of background music being played. And then in meditation, we use this japa for a different reason. It is an invitation. Come into the inmost depths of my being where you already reside. Let me call upon you so that I can recognize the presence of this divinity within me, characterized as the image of a heart, the inmost spiritual heart, the area in depth, the space within, as it were, the cave of the heart, where that resides, of the size of a thumb, not literally, but for conceptual reasons, meditation reasons. So when we engage our speech and our words and our concepts in this way, what are we doing? We are transforming our whole self psychophysically, and we are transforming the whole world as well. The power of a thought or intention is more powerful than a laser beam, more powerful than the speed of light, quicker than the speed of light, more powerful than the most damaging spell or magic or any of these things. No, it is the power of concepts expressed as thoughts and ultimately as formulated words and language. I saw something funny fairly recently. Somebody misunderstood who didn't speak French, and the French person was communicating in English. And the misunderstanding was that the listener thought that the speaker was being very angry and was saying, I am angry. And actually, he was saying, I am hungry. But you see, the words get pronounced in a different way. So that's fine. All right. So with all of that, we can conclude this subject matter. We have 2 minutes or so left. So if you want to add a question or something, you can do that. We try and make things more interactive. If there's nothing, of course, we'll wish you a good weekend.
Sorry, Swamiji. How would the equation work? Thoughts to intentions or words to thoughts to intentions or intentions to thoughts to words. Sorry, and the reason I'm saying that is I have sometimes, without expressing words or without thinking in words, really strong intentions, and they carry me through, challenges and difficulties. But I don't know if I created those intentions with words, if that makes any sense at all. If it doesn't, you can just end the call.
No, it's a good question. So not all thoughts are intentional, of course, because this verbal delusion, this vikalpa that I mentioned, this variety of waves in the mind, such a thing, of course, is a reaction where we seem to have no control over it. Of course, potentially we do. It's just we don't exercise it. So there's that kind of speech that occurs. But then if we weigh our intentions up carefully, that is, to intend to elevate a situation or a person, that's where intention comes and can easily be neutralized. Now, all thoughts and intentions carry through to the end. And unless they're neutralized by counter thoughts. Why is that? It's because our foundation of the thought itself is the knower and the thinker and the witness in one. So if the Lord of the universe is the thinker behind all thoughts coming through from cosmic mind, then of course it will carry through. But the problem is we tend to think in such ways as to negate our original thought or intention. Now, there's the other form of intention, which is formulated in words that says, I will do this. Let's say tomorrow I will do this. And sometimes we carry it out and sometimes we don't. Now, when we carry it out, we are simply re-endorsing the words that form the intentions and therefore the thoughts. But as with a counter thought, when we don't carry out our intention fully to the end, it is because something else got in the way, and that something else is counteracting our original intention or postponing it, possibly. So there are these varieties, but all thoughts, either intentional thoughts or unconscious thoughts, are all formed in pictorial language. They all come with concepts. And all these concepts are formulated in language. You cannot separate words and concepts, even though they may happen so rapidly that we may not be fully aware of them. Now, the point is, if you have a good intention, then you rehearse it. If you really want to achieve anything in life, you can do it through rehearsing this intention, repeating it constantly, living it, visualizing it, acting upon it. In other words, make it your magnificent obsession if it's valuable to you. All the things that we ever achieve in any field, we would have to do by cultivating a strong want for it, a strong desire for it. If you want a vision of God, you have a yearning heart. If you want something in secular life or material life, you cultivate a strong desire. And that desire comes with the intention that is already there. And if you really want to accomplish it, you'll also have an internal monologue which says, already accomplished. It's already done. Why wouldn't it be? I have faith in the cosmic mind that carries everything out. But then desire has to be followed by determination, and then followed by dedication. These are the 3 Ds, I call them: desire, determination, dedication. Sister Nivedita, the dedicated one, the one who has dedicated her life to a certain mission, a certain cause. And of course, if that gets diluted, then the effect gets diluted. The intention gets diluted, the effect also gets diluted. So we have to formulate strong intentions. These we call resolves. Everything begins off with a resolution. I resolve to do this. And when that resolve gets weakened by any distracting external circumstances or whatever, we have to reaffirm it. And when that reaffirmation becomes determination, we were studying the Ashtavakra Gita yesterday with a certain student. And there the author is telling us about persistence. There has to be a level of persistence. And with that persistence, then we get through. If you want to break through a wall, you can start off with a small hammer and then make a small hole, and then make a bigger hole, and make a bigger hole. But all the time, the blows are in a certain direction. If you want to, in mining, for example, if you want to create a big passage, you drill small holes. And in that, you place the explosives. And the combined activity of all of that gives you a cavity which was bigger than your original small holes. So you endorse it continuously and underline your intention. We can get whatever we want within reason, according to the laws. The cosmic mind is the governing body, then we have to conform to what we call divine will. Theoretically, we have the power to change the positions of the sun and moon, but natural law will tell us this is not a wise thing to do. It's not how it was designed. Let's not do it. So you cannot do certain things. You cannot look in the mirror and say, my nose is here. I wish it was on the back of my head. No, that is all against the divine structure, which is designed to be useful to us. But other than that, the cosmic mind is no discriminator of thought, normally speaking, and will give you any boon you ask. This is why in mythology, all our boons come from Brahma, the creative principle, which is the cosmic mind. It is called Hiranyagarbha. In philosophy, it's called Hiranyagarbha, the golden womb of everything, or the seed of everything. And in mythology, we call it Brahma. And in theology, we call it Creator. All right, we leave it there then. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.